الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. قال الله تعالى في التنزيل العزيز بعد نقول أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. وقال يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. أما بعد. In Surah Qasas, Surah 28, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions the story of Musa alayhi salam, as is mentioned in many other parts of the Quran. But in Surah Qasas, there's a part of the story of Musa that is very interesting and something that is not mentioned or even referenced in other parts of the Quran. That part is the marriage of Musa alayhi salam. When Musa alayhi salam got married. And it's a very interesting passage, a very beautiful passage. Many lessons can be learned and extrapolated from that passage. But one of the interesting things that we notice in the passage is when Musa alayhi salam meets his father-in-law to be, he's actually fleeing persecution from the Pharaoh. At this time, he hasn't received revelation yet. He's running away from the Pharaoh. And he is seeking refuge in this area called Midian. Okay, Midian in English. And this Musa alayhi salam is, as a refugee coming here, he did a favor to the daughters of this man, and they wanted their father to repay him a favor by giving him some money or some gift or something. And as Musa is telling his story, the father decides to offer one of his daughters in marriage to Musa alayhi salam. He says, قَالَ إِنِّي أُرِيدُ أَنْ أُنْكِحَكَ إِحْدَى ابْنَتَيَّ هَاتَيْنِ عَلَى أَنْ تَأْجُرَنِي ثَمَانِيَ حِجَجٍ. He decides to offer the hand of one of his daughters in marriage to Musa alayhi salam. And Musa alayhi salam, as the Quran tells us, accepts this proposal. And the beautiful thing about the story, like it's like a full circle. Musa alayhi salam, when he left Egypt, running away from the Pharaoh, he lost his family, he lost his house, he lost his job, he had nothing. And within this short period of time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala replaced for him everything that he lost. He had a family now, he had a job employed by his father-in-law, and a house for him to live in. Showing, by the way, the power of dua. Musa alayhi salam made the dua, Rabbi inni lima anzalta ilayya min khairin faqir. My Lord, I am in need of any good you send me. And this is how amazingly, how fast Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala answered his prayer, providing him with everything he lost and actually even more. So this was, that's the story. But the interesting part that I'd like you to pay attention to today is how quickly Musa alayhi salam got married. How smooth of a transaction this was, wherein the father-in-law sees qualities that are admirable in this young man: chivalry, honor, dignity, righteousness, and very quickly decides this is a good person and my daughter needs someone like this, and decides to offer, with of course the consent of his daughter, the hand of her hand in marriage. This is not to say that the point of the story is not that the due diligence should not be done. The point of the story is not that there should be no phase of trying to understand compatibility and whatnot. That's not the point of the story. The point of the story is when two people are compatible, or there is a good vibe between two people and two families, marriage should be expedited. It should be facilitated. It should not, artificial barriers should not be put in front of marriage. In my culture, in the Pakistani Indian culture, marriage, we call it it's like the all-star weekend, right? You have event after event after event. And finally, Miskeen gets married at the end. Right? So many things are happening before the marriage. And so many things have to happen prior to. Frankly, it's emotionally exhausting. By the time the person gets married and they're now together, what energy is left of them to bond emotionally, because they've spent so much just leading up to that moment. And that doesn't even take into account the difficult nature of finding a spouse. How difficult this has become. Doesn't even take into account that. I want to talk about this. Mashallah, there's lots of young people in the audience. Some of you are too young to get married, so no problem. But you should hear this anyway. This should be heard by all, that this is a problem in our community, that we need to talk about it and we need to take concrete steps to address it. Because if not, it becomes a disaster. It becomes a complete, unmitigated disaster. Consider a few things here I'll share with you. Firstly, the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, where he encourages people to get married, particularly younger people. He says, "Ya ma'shar al-shabab man istata'a minkum al-ba'ata falyatazawwaj." Young men, he's talking to young men, but he's talking to all young people, men and women, addressing everybody. Young people, if you're able to do so, if you're able to get married financially, emotionally, do so. Because it's better for you. It's a path to purity. You will find contentment. All the jokes that are made about married couples having this issue and that issue, these are in fact jokes made in bad taste, in my opinion. Because the Quran actually talks about marriage in a very beautiful way. Hunna libasul lakum wa antum libasul lahun. They are like clothes for you and you are like clothes for them. A beautiful image of closeness, right? Intimacy is very close. That's the image the Quran is giving. You are extremely close to your spouse. The Quran talks about لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُمْ مَوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً. You may find tranquility, peace and serenity in marriage. That's the purpose. And He has put in these host of emotions, a spectrum of them. Love that goes from extremely passionate, emotional love to love where you are caring for the person at a deeper level. All things in between. وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُمْ مَوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً. This is إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَاتٍ. These are the signs of God. That's how the Quran talks about marriage. When the Quran speaks about marriage and family and kids, it says, رَبَّنَا هَبْ لَنَا مِنْ أَزْوَاجِنَا وَذُرِّيَّاتِنَا قُرَّةَ أَعْيُنٍ. Oh our Lord, give us the gift of family, wife and children, husband and children, that will make us cry tears of joy. That's how the Quran speaks about marriage and family. It's a gift. It's a blessing. It's where you find your comfort. It's where you find your happiness. And in the jokes that we make in very poor taste, that part is often forgotten. It's the place where you find fulfillment, sexual fulfillment. This is part of the deen. One of you comes to your ayati ahaduna shahwatahu fayakunu lahu fihi ajr. The Sahaba asked the Prophet, if we are intimate with our wives, we are just fulfilling our desires. Is this an act of ajr? The Prophet said, yes. وَفِي بُطْءِ أَحَدِكُمْ صَدَقَةً. This is an act of worship. Because لَوْ وَضَعَهَا فِي حَرَامٍ. If he was to do it, this act, outside of marriage, it will be a major sin. So doing this act, performing it within the bounds of marriage, is one of the greatest acts of worship. That's how the Quran and Sunnah talk about marriage, and that's how it's encouraged. It cannot become, as a community, we cannot, allow artificial barriers to be placed in front of this process that debilitate the young person who's looking for this contentment, looking for this serenity. We can't do that. I received a call from a family friend, and this is a frequent call. This is not like a once in a blue moon type call. These kind of calls are extremely frequent. Requests of this nature are very common, where a person calls or emails and says, I'm looking to get married. I don't know anybody. I can't find anybody. I have spent this many years looking for someone to get married. I can't get married. I'm at a loss. Help me. And I feel very inadequate because I really can't help them. I don't have like a system in place to help them, unfortunately. This is a communal failing. This is generally done, if we look back in time, communities would arrange for this in one way or other. But unfortunately, this is something that has fallen through the cracks. The tragedy of it all is it's so easy to do something that's haram. It's so easy for a person to engage in sexual activity outside of marriage. Yet there's no support systems that are made for this. Look at how much we invest in our properties. The masjid, alhamdulillah, we need to do that. It's not belittling it, but it's important to do it. But compare this investment to how little, if any, investments we make in this to solve this problem, where our young people are just, left to their own devices to figure out how to get married. And this, unfortunately, is not just a Muslim problem. It's not just a problem that the Muslim community is actually experiencing. This is now becoming a global phenomenon. There's studies done in Canada, in America, in South Korea. South Korea is the most stark example of this, where a man goes years and years without being intimate with a woman. I was actually reading a study right now about this. The stats are not the important part. You can go and Google this. Google celibacy or the increase in celibacy. Just Google that and you will come across article after article talking about the problem of young people not being able to find suitable partners and going years and years without being intimate. This is excluding like all the things that we have, which is you have to get married, you have to have mahar, this is a family thing, etc. This is just two people hooking up. Even that has become very difficult. Even that. How much more complicated is it for now us as a Muslim community? And how much worse it gets when we start to introduce all of these other things. It's completely deflating for a young person to look at the mountain that's been placed in front of them just to do something that is natural, which is having someone to love and having someone to love you back. أقول ما تسمعون واستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه إنه الغفور الرحيم. Please move up inshallah ta'ala just to make some space. جزاكم الله خيرا. If there's any gap in front of you, please fill them up inshallah. Billah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillahi wa ala alihi wa ashabihi wa wala amma ba'd. I don't have a solution today. I don't. This is part of the problem. This is, before we go anywhere, at least let's admit the problem. Right? The problem is, this is something we just left to the young people to do themselves. Figure it out on your own. We don't really have a community-wide solution for this, unfortunately. I don't, at least. We have some good apps that are there. But again, I can't vouch for one or the other. The process has almost no involvement from the community. Whereas aslan, this was a community process. Families would get involved. Communities would get involved together to make sure that every young person will feel content and fulfilled. Doesn't mean that there's no problems afterwards. Problems are there. But at least there's a safety net that's provided. So I don't have a solution today, but I wanted to at least speak out loud of the problem so that it is registering. And maybe some more capable folks will come together. And let's work together then with those capable folks to find some solution. But something must be done because this is a real problem. I actually have a list of people on my email. I have a label for people that want to get married. It's the most depressing label I have in my inbox. Because nobody from that label who has emailed me and has said, give me your profile, I have been able to get married. They're all just sitting in my list. And they're all still looking to get married. So this is a major, major issue. We have to facilitate this. We have to make this easy. As a community, we have to stop burdening our young people. A small example of it would be to burden them with all of these responsibilities. Like you have to have your masters, you have to have your own place. All these things are, while admirable, maybe are not feasible immediately. Maybe there's a better solution. Maybe a solution like you get married, what's called Aqd Qiran, or Katbul Kitab, or Nikah, as a young man and a young woman, and now you're a couple. But then you're still within the guardianship of your families. You're still living with your parents. You're still studying. You're still doing your own thing, but you're married. You have someone to, find that contentment with. And then once you are able to stand on your own feet, you will do so by moving out. This is a good solution. Islamically, this is 100% valid Islamically, this solution. How acceptable is it for us culturally? That's the question. That's the question all of us have to ask ourselves. The Prophet ﷺ, I'll conclude with this. The Prophet ﷺ said, ثلاثة حق على الله حق على الله عونهم. He said there's three groups of people. It is Allah's responsibility to help them. The first one, he says, Al-Mujahidu fi sabilillah. The person who is voluntarily striving in the path of God. Striving to defend the ummah and the believers against threats. Allah is going to help this person. Of course, this is within the context of the right systems. It's a government thing. This is not a vigilante. Okay, number one. Number two, al-mukatibu alladhi yuridu al-ada. A slave who wants to buy their freedom, their emancipation. This is something that Islam encouraged. فَكَاتِبُوهُمْ إِنْ عَلِمْتُمْ فِيهِمْ خَيْرًا. If there's a slave, make a contract so they can earn their freedom and emancipation and then enter the community, join the community as productive members. And this is something that is quite intentional in our Sharia. And lastly, النَّاكِحُ الَّذِي يُرِيدُ الْعَفَافِ. And this is the point, this is the one I'll conclude with. The person who's looking to get married. who wants to get married for the right reasons, because they want to protect their chastity. That is a person Allah will help them. So if you are in this situation, my young brother or young sister, or even older brother or older sister, if you're in this situation, Allah's help is guaranteed for you. I'm not saying that, the Prophet is saying that. But we as a community have to come together also to offer support. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that this problem, we can help our brothers and sisters who are looking for the solution for this. إِنَّهُ وَلِيُّ ذَلِكَ وَالْقَادِرُ عَلَيْهِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who's able to do so. إِنَّ اللَّهَ وَمَلَائِكَتَهُ يُصَلُّونَ عَلَى النَّبِيِّ يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا صَلُّوا عَلَيْهِ وَسَلِّمُوا تَسْلِيمًا اللهم صل على محمد في الأولين وفي الآخرين وصل على محمد في الملأ الأعلى إلى يوم الدين اللهم أحينا على سنته ومتنا على ملته واحشرنا في زمرته واسقنا من حوضه يا رب العالمين اللهم آت نفوسنا تقواها وزكها أنت خير من زكاها أنت وليها ومولاها ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار اللهم اغفر للمسلمين والمسلمات المؤمنين والمؤمنات الأحياء منهم والأموات إنك سميع قريب مجيب الدعوات وقيموا الصلاة.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
استووا استقيموا تراصوا. Please make sure the lines are straight. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. إذا جاء نصر الله والفتح ورأيت الناس يدخلون في دين الله أفواجا فسبح بحمد ربك واستغفر إنه كان توابا. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. Allahu Akbar. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I have two announcements to make if you can give me a moment of your time. Number one is, in light of our provincial government dropping the mask mandate for religious institutions, as of March 21st, the LMM will no longer be enforcing the use of masks while the Musallin are on our premises. While masks are no longer mandatory, we highly recommend that individuals who belong to a high-risk demographic continue to use masks and take necessary precautions to protect their health. This is important. Starting March 21st is Monday, right? Starting Monday, inshallah. So please make sure that when you come, if you are high risk, or if you feel safer wearing a mask, please continue to do so. We recommend it still. But if you are following the guidelines, you can take off your mask, and we will not be enforcing it. We will not be saying put your mask on. So that's number one. Number two, tonight after Maghrib, continuing with our Islam 101 series, tonight we are covering the pillar of zakat. Last time we talked about Siyam, now we're talking about zakat. Many people give their zakat in Ramadan, so we will talk about how to calculate it, who can receive zakat, who cannot receive zakat, well, do you give zakat on your pension, etc., etc. All that will be covered tonight after Maghrib, here in person and online. Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum.